Good morning. It's Friday morning. We're going to look a little bit at Paul's beginnings of his career as the evangelist to the Gentiles, and he's back to Jerusalem. So Acts 9:26 through 30. When he had come to Jerusalem, he attempted to join the disciples, and they were all afraid of him, for they did not believe he was a disciple. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles, and declared to them how on the road he had seen the Lord, who spoke to him, and how at Damascus he had preached boldly in the name of Jesus. So he went in and out among them at Jerusalem, preaching boldly in the name of the Lord. And he spoke and disputed against the Hellenists, but they were seeking to kill him. And when the brothers learned this, they brought him down to Caesarea and sent him off to Tarsus. So he leaves Damascus. Remember, he slipped out in the basket and down the wall in the middle of the night and ran away. Went back to Jerusalem. He's there in Jerusalem, and he goes to see the church. And they're terrified because this is the guy who was arresting us. Are we sure he's really a Christian? Maybe he's faking it so he can find out who the Christians are. They just didn't know what to do with Paul. And Barnabas came up and vouched for him. And Barnabas had heard or had witnessed perhaps some of this, his preaching at least, in Damascus. And so Barnabas knew that he was genuine. And Barnabas vouches for him. And so he's allowed to be there, and he goes in and out among them and preaches boldly, and everyone is pleased. Paul has become a convert. He disputes with the Hellenists, it says, which, remember back a couple chapters ago, the Hellenists were arguing with the Hebrews, the Hebraists, about whose widows got fair distributions of food each day. And they didn't think their widows were getting the right amount of food. And these are Greek-speaking people, and there may have been some Gentile converts among them. I don't know that. But there is already this tension between the Greek-speaking and the Hebrew-speaking people in the church. And so he disputes with them, and somehow they decide to kill him. Now, I don't get that exactly, but, love thy neighbor, right? They decide to kill Paul, and so the apostles spirit him out of Jerusalem, take him to Caesarea, which is a coastal city, and there put him on a boat for Tarsus, which, if you think of the Mediterranean, there's the east coast of the Mediterranean, has Jerusalem and Israel is on that coast. And right around the curve up there at the top is Tarsus. So he goes home. Now, if we put Acts together with, I think it's in Galatians that he tells his story. He says, and then 10 years after that, and 3 years later, I did this. And so it's hard to know if we're talking about 10 years or 14 years. I'll have to do some research on that. As we go through Acts, we'll try to connect Acts with the letters and things that Paul writes. And all of that is very muddy and difficult because we don't have dates for most of this stuff. But it's clear to me that he went home to Tarsus and spent some years in Tarsus doing the research, reading the scriptures, really learning his material and getting it straight. And then when he comes back, he's really ready to preach. And he starts going on these, what are called his missionary journeys. And that's what most of the rest of Acts describes. So what do we learn from this? I think one thing we learn is that God can convert anybody, and even people that have been enemies of the church or our enemies, they're suddenly at church and they're suddenly our brothers and sisters. And why couldn't we get along? That's something we need to think about. And I hope you will today. There's some more healings and stuff to go on before Paul really gets going, but we'll get to those in the next few days. And I hope that you have a great Friday.